People of Harrisburg can help by viewing this as their community, by getting involved with the crime watch, with the neighborhood, by looking out for your neighborhood, by treating this as your home. Harrisburg's a neat little city. It has some distinct personalities. It's got some distinct neighborhoods.
Nobody knows my sorrows. Slavery was a hard condition, and the only ones that benefited from it were the master and their families.
Good afternoon, Harrisburg. And good afternoon to my good friends who are with us always. My name is Linwood Sloan. I'm Director of Arts, Culture, and Tourism for the city of Harrisburg. Our acronym stands for ACT, and we like to act out, we like to act right, we like to act up. Each first Friday and third Friday of the month is a time of action in the atrium of City Hall. The mayor's belief is that the atrium of the City Hall is like the front porch for the city. And so each first and third Friday, we try to set a bit of a table for you, something for your belly, something for your spirit, and something for your minds and your hearts. I welcome those of you who are here in the atrium and those of you who are at home watching at Channel 20, either at noontime or any time that you see this repetition. Grab your favorite snacks, slide on up to the screen, and enjoy this next hour. We begin by saying that on July 4th, we stood on the steps of the mansion at Reservoir Park to inaugurate the 4th of July, and while people read the Declaration of Independence at the Cameron House, we read Frederick Douglass's famous July 4th speech on the steps of the mansion, bringing two points of view together. I'd like to bring those points of view together today in our program, but first we are going to start with our Harrisburg Honors Project. You know, Honors Project identifies the front line of the fire department, the police department, public works, sanitation, those men and women who are doing the heavy lifting in Harrisburg. Our slogan is to treat them like the heroes that they are. And our Harrisburg Honors today is for Captain Colin Cleary. And Captain, would you join us? And I'd like to introduce to you those who are here and those who are at home. Captain Colin Cleary. Sir, I am one of those people who love that airport map that says you are here. So could you help us by defining what is your task and what is your job and what is your jurisdiction here in Harrisburg on the police force?
Well, certainly. My name is Colin Cleary. I'm a police officer with the city of Harrisburg. First and foremost, I am a police officer. I'm also currently privileged to serve as the commander of the Uniform Patrol in the Technical Services Division. So the men and women that are out there in the cars, in the uniforms, providing service 24/7, the real heroes of the agency are the ones that are under my command. I also have responsibility for the Technical Services Division, which is a support division. We provide things like taking care of the evidence room, taking care of the vehicles, doing the training, the court liaison. So it's really sort of a mixed bag of things that we have going on in Uniform Patrol and Technical Services.
Sir, what is a day like for you? Is there anything like an ordinary day, or what is the activity from top to bottom in your day?
My day, and one of the things I like about policing is that sometimes days are much, much different than others. I primarily work in an office now, which makes me a little sad sometimes. I do like to get out in the street with the officers. Primarily, I'm in here supervising, making sure that the police officers are providing the services that the citizens need, fielding occasional complaints. I'm also pleased to field compliments. It does a lot of good when the citizens contact us about a positive interaction that they've had with the officers, be it an officer changing a tire for them, assisting them with some directions, just providing some sort of assistance. So we always like to hear things like that. And basically, I try to provide support for the officers to get them the things that they need, get the vehicles that they need, the equipment, provide the support, supervision, and guidance that the officers need to do their jobs.
Sir, what was your first impulse where you knew you wanted to be a policeman and serve?
This is something, it's kind of cliche, but it's something I knew that I wanted to do since I was a child. On my 18th birthday, I walked into the recruiter's office and I said, I want to be a military policeman. 3 days later, I was in Anniston, Alabama, and I've been in one form of uniform ever since then in some sort of capacity. I've worked as a military police officer, campus police officer, a dispatcher, and as an officer here in Harrisburg.
How do you prepare your men and women for the challenge of their day? And what's your address or advice or charge to them as they go off to serve?
Well, with many of our officers, they really don't need a charge. They're motivated. They're happy to serve the citizens. They're eager to get out in the street and do the law enforcement that they love to do and the city needs. I try to provide whatever support I can in whatever the officer needs, be it from a motivational sort of level, personal sort of level, getting the officers the training, the support that they need. I just try to tailor it to each officer.
And sir, what brings joy to you in your work?
Joy, I love being a police officer. I love being out there with the officers. I love seeing the fruits of our labor. It's not often that police officers get to have a happy ending for everybody, because a lot of times we're taking people into custody, we're enforcing the laws, we're trying to prevent things from happening. But I take a lot of satisfaction in providing police support and just making people in the city of Harrisburg feel safe. So if you're asking the thing that I like most, is when you're driving down the street and the street is quiet, the citizens waving to you, talking to you, telling you that they're glad that you're out there, glad that the officers are out there. I guess that's what I get the most joy from.
And the flip side of that, sir, would be sorrow. I know there is a great deal of sorrow in the job. How do you manage that sorrow and continue to move towards the joy?
As an inner city police officer, you see a lot of sad things. You see a lot of tragedies. I'm very fortunate that my wife Stacy is a wonderful support system for me. We also have a great group of officers here that I think everybody recognizes and understands that there are stressors to the job, and we lean on each other and we get support and guidance from each other. There's also we have a police chaplaincy program. Some of the chaplains ride with the officers. There's some other support systems that are available. But I guess the basic thing is the support of my family.
Could I ask you how you came to Harrisburg as the source and recipient of your service?
Well, police jobs in the early 90s were kind of hard to come by, and Harrisburg hired me, so I came down here, and I'm happy to say that I made it my home.
And if you look out into our audience and to our visitors, how can the people of Harrisburg help?
The people of Harrisburg can help by viewing this as their community, by getting involved with the crime watch, with the neighborhood, by looking out for your neighborhood, by treating this as your home. Harrisburg's a neat little city. It has some distinct personalities. It's got some distinct neighborhoods. And just living in the city and making it your home, I think, is the best way that you can help the city.
And sir, a parting piece of advice for those of us in Harrisburg to make our day safer?
To make your day safer, we always tell people just to be aware of their surroundings, use good common sense, and if your gut tells you that there's something wrong, listen to it. Most times your instincts are right.
I do have one other question, sir, before I open to the audience. Your time in Harrisburg, how have you seen the streets change in Harrisburg, and what advice would you give us for communities participating in community watches?
I think Harrisburg has changed quite a bit. It was a little bit more of a rough and tumble city in the early 90s when I came on. Some of the things that have happened, the gentrification in Midtown, the Hack campus. I remember as a young officer seeing those buildings start to be put into use and thinking, I don't know if that's going to work in this neighborhood, and it has, and it's worked wonderfully, and it's changed the neighborhood. And I would just encourage people to get involved in programs like that, to get involved in Neighborhood Watch, to get involved in the neighborhood. Just be a neighbor.
We have the opportunity to ask the Captain Cleary some questions. If you have a question or you'd like to make a statement, this is an opportunity for us to embrace, through engagement and exchange, our police department and encourage us to lift them up in spirit and in action by participating in the safety. So is there anybody that has a question or a comment or a statement they would like to make? Yes, sir.
I'll ask one just to start something. Nobody wants to be first, you know. Years ago, when I was a young child, I had an aunt. If you look back into the police history, you may be able to find this, okay? I guess you have a historical record somewhere of the police department, is that correct?
Yes, we do.
Yeah. If you look back into the history, you should find back there, and I had an aunt who also had a friend who was working, volunteering, I think it was a volunteer job, who was a captain. She had a friend. And they were both women. I don't know about men, I just happen to know those two. And they were part of an auxiliary police force. So like Labor Day, Capone and stuff are coming out, they would be the ones who would patrol the riverfront as an auxiliary police officers. Has the city ever considered moving back into that era of maybe having auxiliary police officers?
I'm familiar with the ladies that you're talking about. We do have their photographs are up in one part of the building, and there's some historical information on them. One of the difficulties, one of the barriers to that now is those were kind of simpler times. The certifications, the things that you need to be a police officer now are much more strenuous than they used to be. There's an entire 6-month training program that you have to go through. So the idea that we would just be able to use volunteers for some of the enforcement duties, some of the things that we used to be able to do, we're really not able to do anymore because the times have changed, the regulations and the training have changed.
Yeah, I don't know that they had arrest powers. There's probably more security, and they maybe did not have arrest powers, you know, at that time. I'm talking about probably in the 40s. I was pretty young kid, you know, at the time. And so, do you have pictures and all of that?
If they're the ladies that you're speaking of, yeah, there are a couple. They had some enforcement powers to write citations and things like that.
Yeah, could I see them sometimes to see my aunt's picture again?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you can also visit the Harrisburg Archives, which are in the second floor of the mansion at Reservoir Park. And we have a fine group of young students doing the digitization project, digitizing our collections. If you call the mansion at 255-3020 and give that piece of information, we'll attempt to find that photograph for you in our collection. Okay? Out at Reservoir Park. Sir, I know you have to go and defend and protect, but can I ask you one last question, and that is, who are your heroes?
My heroes. You blindsided me with that one.
Sorry, that was one that wasn't.
Someone that I look at as a leader, to look at as a local example, Major Richard Winters. A lot of you know him as the gentleman that was the Band of Brothers series was sort of based around. I think that gentleman is a true hero. I believe his leadership style and what he did for this country was just admirable. So if you're looking for one of my true heroes, Dick Winters.
Well, you're a true hero to us, sir. We thank you very much. Harrisburg, here and there, let us give our thanks. Look for Captain Cleary, and the best way you can honor him is to honor one of his men or women on the streets and in the fields. Walk up to that policeman or policewoman shake their hand, remind them that their life, your heart, come together through their service. So this is August 1st. And again, I say that we read Frederick Douglass's words on his July 4th speech. He says that August 1st really should be the Independence Day for African Americans. And so in many African American communities, they celebrate August 1st as Independence Day because of the struggle for freedom in the Underground Railroad. We are happy to present to you this afternoon Miss Lynn Blacksman, who brings us our August 1st Independence Day commemoration through her interpretation. Yes, ma'am.
Slavery was a hard condition, and the only ones that benefited from it were the master and their families. Oh, I used to sit in that little one-room church and I'd watch the other slave women as they hold their children close to them, and they'd be rocking and crying, and I'd be rocking and crying. And I asked the Lord, why so much pain? I am Harriet Jacobs, also known as Linda Brent. And I'll come back because I wanted to tell you my story. Now, folks, they say I couldn't have wrote my story because a slave girl can't read or write. Not so. Now, me, my mother, my father, and my brother, we lived in the master's house with him and his family. Oh, and we was quite content there until one day my mother, she took sick. And my mistress, she promised my mother on her dying bed that she would take care of her children. And she did. Oh, she taught me how to read and write and mend. And then one day, as fate would have it, she sickened and died. And I wondered who was going to take care of me. And I was sent to live at a slave master's house by the name of Dr. Norcom Flint. And I cried every day and every night that I was there. I cried because I missed my mother. I cried because I missed my father. I cried because I missed my mistress. Now, I did everything that I was told to do. I did the washing, the ironing, the cooking, the cleaning, the mending, and the taking care of the children. And I started to notice that everywhere that I went, why, Dr. Flint, he was there. If I went to hang the clothes, well, he was there. If I went to prepare the meals, well, he was there. If I went to kneel at my dear mother's grave, well, he was there. Now, friends, there ain't no protection for a slave girl from a master. See, because the master, he can do whatever he wants. And there ain't nothing that nobody can do or say about it. Why, the mistress, she ain't gonna help you. Well, she ain't gonna help you because she's jealous. She thinks that the slave girl wants the master to come after her so she can get favors from him. Now, the master, he used to ask me to bring him a meal up to his room. And on my way to taking him that meal, I'd make a lot of noise with my shoes. And the mistress, she stopped me and she said, "Linda, where are you going?" And I say, "The master, he wants me to bring him a meal." And she said, "Sit it down and go on." And I'd sit it down and I'd go on. And when I get out of eyesight, I smile. Now, I bore 2 children. And I did something that I'm not proud of, but I did it because I wanted to keep a piece of myself. And what I did was, I took up with a white man by the name of Mr. Sands. And Mr. Sands, he was a lawyer, and he cared for me, and he respected me. Now, me and Mr. Sands, we came up with a plan that he would go to Dr. Flint and ask him to buy me, and he was going to give me my freedom. So Mr. Sands, he went and he asked Dr. Flint to sell me to him. And Dr. Flint, he said, no, she ain't for sale. Well, I think Dr. Flint, he saw right through that plan. Now, I bore Mr. Sands 2 children, my baby girl Ellen and my baby boy, Colin. When Dr. Flint found out I was with child the first time, he called me to his room and he said, Linda, is it true that you're with child? And I said, yes, sir, master. And he jumped on me and he kicked me. And then he told me, he said, now get on up and go on and finish your chores. And I got up. And when I was out of eyesight, I smiled. Now, when Dr. Flint found out I was with child the second time, he called me to his room. And he said, Linda, are you with child? Oh, and this time I hesitated and I said, yes, sir, master. And he jumped on me and he kicked me and he dropped me down the hall and threw me down the steps. And he said, now, get on up and go on, finish your chores. And I got up. He was out of eyesight. I smiled. Now, my baby girl, Ellen, she cried a lot when she was born. Now, I think she cried a lot because she knew what kind of situation she was being born in. And the mistress, she said, take that crying nigger baby on over to your grandmother's house. Ain't nobody want to hear all that crying. So I took her over to my grandmother's house. My baby boy, Benny, he stayed sick. And the master, he told me, he said, you ain't got time to be taking care of no sick nigger, baby. You got chores to do. He said, take him on over to your grandmother's house. So I took him on over to my grandmother's house. Now there was a joy that rose up in me because I know that my children was being taken care of. And I know that my grandmother, she was giving them the love and attention that I would give them if I could be with them. Now, this started me to thinking about my freedom and what it would be like if I could be with my family. And I was able to go on and do my chores. And Dr. Flint, he saw that I was happy. Oh, he was watching me, and I was watching him. Now, one day, while I was doing my chores, I overheard the master and the mistress. And the master, he told the mistress that he was going to sell me and my children. Oh, well, right then, I put my plan in effect to escape. A couple days after that, I was in the house, and I was doing my chores. And I overheard the master tell the mistress, we gonna sell her and her children come tomorrow afternoon. That evening, I was in the house, and I was doing my chores, and the master, he said, Linda, why isn't the house locked up? And I said, Master, I'm still doing my chores. And he said, well, hurry up and get done. And I said, yes, sir, master. Now that night when the house was quiet and everybody was in bed, I went down the steps and I eased open a window. And I jumped out into the pouring down rain. And I ran 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 and I ran. I ran about 12 miles to my grandmother's house. And when I got there, I tapped on the window and my Aunt Nancy, she come round and opened the door and she let me in. And she said, Linda, what are you doing here? It ain't safe. And I told her, I said, I heard the master tell the mistress that he gonna sell me and my children come tomorrow. I told her, I said, I won't free. Her and my grandmother, they put me up in a spot, in a little space over top the roof. And up on top of that roof, there was a little blanket and a pillow there. And there was rats and mice running all around. And there was little red ants, they was biting me. And my grandmother, she gave me some salve to put on those little bites. I stayed up in that space about 7 years. And during that time, all I could think about was freedom and what I would do if I ever had the chance to be free. Oh, but one night, there was a free slave named Peter, and he called me, and he said, Miss Linda, if you ever want to be free, tonight's the night. He said, there's a boat sailing to Philadelphia. If you want to be free, you'll be on that boat. Oh, and I thought about all the times that I wish for being free. And I thought about leaving my grandmother because I know that would be the last time I'd see her on earth. Oh, but I thought about freedom and how long I'd waited. And I told Peter, I said, yes, I'm gonna go. And Peter, he gave me a sailor suit, and I put those pants on, and I put that top on. He gave me a hat, and I put that hat on. And then he gave me some ashes, and I smudged them on my face. And he told me, he said, when we walk through town, he said, walk like this. And I kissed my grandmother, and I kissed my Aunt Nancy, and me and Peter, we walked through town, and I had my head down. And there was people that I knowed. I saw Mr. Sands. And we got to the boat. And we got there was a man there. And the man, he said, get down there. And I got down there. And the boat started rocking back and forth. And I was rocking back and forth with the boat because I was rocking to my freedom. And when we got to Philadelphia, there was a preacher and his wife that met me there. And they took me to their house. And when I got to the house, well, there was townspeople there that I knowed. Oh, and we laughed and we hugged each other. And we talked about the people that we knowed. We talked about the people that we saw hung from the trees. And we talked about the people that we saw get their foots cut off. And we talked about this newfound thing called freedom and what we was gonna do with it. Now, friends, that should be the end of my story. Now, another monster reared its ugly head. Dr. Flint's son-in-law, he had put out a $300 reward for my capture. And the friends that had helped me escape to Philadelphia, they told me, run to another place. And I told them, I said, I ain't running. I said, I am free. I'm a human being. I'm supposed to be free. And unbeknownst to me, they went and they paid Dr. Flint's son-in-law $300 for my freedom. And they brought me those freedom papers back. And I looked at those papers, and I was angry. But a part of me was happy, because I was free. I sing, because I'm happy. I sing, because I'm free. Oh, his eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me. Thank you.
I am going to ask Miss Valonda Harris, our wonderful assistant, if she will give you some literature about Lynn and her programs. But Lynn, first tell me, how do you prepare yourself to take on this incredible woman, Harriet?
The first thing I did when thinking about the story of Harriet Jacobs was I read the story, and it just touched my heart, and I was like, okay. So I read it, and I read it, and I read it, and then I told myself I have to tell her story. And so in telling her story, I used all these skills that I've learned through my education in the theater, and being in different organizations and the past players. And that's how I started in telling Harriet Jacobs' story.
What part of Harriet Jacobs' story touches Lynn Blackstone's personal narrative?
The part of Harriet Jacobs' story that touches me is her perseverance, being in that small space for 7 years, but having a goal and knowing that that was her purpose for being there, because she knew she was supposed to be free and she was not supposed to be enslaved. So she had to endure a hardship to get to where she wanted to go.
Now, we've been lucky enough to have Miss Lynn Blackstone in our Summer Enrichment Program, our SEME program, Summer Enrichment Experience, Transformation of Young People. What was the experience that you had in the public schools and in our community centers this summer with the kids?
The experience I had with the kids would be to help them to develop their own story. I have another one-woman show that I do that is autobiographical, and the postcards that you have is called the Little Girl Dreams Project. And the Little Girl Dreams Project talks about the different phases of growing up. And I didn't write my own story until I was like, I don't want to date myself, but I think it was like in my early 40s. And I just kept remembering my childhood and the certain things that went on. And I said, there has to be a way to do this other than sitting down and reflecting and going back and back and back. So I figured if I write it, I'll always have it. And I can just turn the page to whatever age or whatever time I want to go to. And that's what I was trying to teach the children during summer enrichment, is that they can start writing their story now. They don't have to wait all that time to remember the things that they're going through, because they'll just have it as they go.
Now, could you share with us some experience that you had in a child that touched your heart this summer?
The experience that I had with a child that touched my heart this summer would have been, most of the kids, every time I went in, they were like, Miss Lynn, I don't have a story. I don't have a story, or we don't have a story collectively, because children, they'll follow each other. And I was like, okay, so they're going to play me now. Okay, so here's how we're going to do it. So I got them to just talk about different things, things that go on in school, things that go on at home. And the main ones that said they didn't have a story, I couldn't shut them up. They just wanted to talk about everything that was going on with them. So it wasn't just one child, it was a lot of children. Mm-hmm.
Now, you can come out and see Lynn at Capona on August 30th at the Spoken Word Festival on the river at City Island. But Lynn, I need to ask you if you'll sing Eyes Are on the Sparrow one more time for us. All those people up in their offices who couldn't step out, you'll be able to touch their heart.
Is everybody going to sing with me?
We'll sing with you, those of us who know.
Okay. Okay. His eye is on, I always start from that part because that's the part I end with. The sparrow, and I know he watches me. I sing because I'm happy. I sing because I'm free. For his eye is on the sparrow, and I know
watches me. All right, Harrisburg, you got a message now for today. Thank you very much, Ms. Lynn Blackston.